A newly retired teacher from Denver, Colorado, told her husband she needed a solo hike to process her big life change and set off for the Rocky Mountains. But she never came home, leaving her devoted husband wondering what went wrong. The case went cold, with investigators believing she'd either taken her own life or suffered a tragic accident. But 4 years later, hikers exploring the wilderness downstream stumble upon something shocking trapped in a beaver dam. Evidence that would shatter the official theory and prove her husband's instincts had been right all along. Yohan's hands trembled as he cracked eggs into the pan, the morning sun streaming through his kitchen window, overlooking the distant silhouette of the Rocky Mountains. For years, 4 years since Laura had kissed him goodbye that morning, promised to be back by dinner, and disappeared into the wilderness she loved so much. The egg sizzled, but his mind was elsewhere, lost in the familiar ache of not knowing. The shrill ring of the phone startled him, causing him to drop the spatula. He glanced at the caller ID, Rocky Mountain National Park. His heart skipped. They hadn't called in over 2 years. Mr. Yohan, Al-Jamil? The ranger's voice was professional but gentle. "This is Ranger Mike Patterson from Rocky Mountain National Park. We need you to come to the station. Some hikers found a backpack in a beaver dam yesterday, and we've traced it through the GPS tracker serial number. It belongs to your wife, Laura." The words hit him like a physical blow. He gripped the counter, his knuckles white. "A backpack after all this time?" "Yes, sir." "Can you come to the ranger station? We have some questions, and the police are already here." Yohan's mind raced as he drove the familiar route to the ranger station, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Every turn brought back memories. This was the road they'd driven together countless times, the 5 children laughing in the back. Laura, always excited about another adventure, always promising to be careful. He'd trusted his wife's experience, her methodical nature. She'd hiked these trails for 30 years. The ranger station parking lot held 2 police cruisers alongside the usual park vehicles. Yohan's stomach churned as he walked through the doors, the scent of pine and old wood triggering more memories. Ranger Patterson, a stocky man in his 40s, greeted him with sympathetic eyes. "Mr. Al-Jamil, thank you for coming. This is Detective Morrison from the County Sheriff's Office." Detective Morrison, a tall woman with graying hair, pulled back severely, extended her hand. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Please have a seat." They led him to a small conference room where Laura's waterlogged backpack sat on the table, mud-stained and partially torn. Yohan's breath caught. He recognized it immediately. The purple and black pack he'd given her for her 50th birthday, complete with the blue carabiner she always clipped to the side. The hikers found it lodged in a beaver dam about 8 miles downstream from Alberta Falls, Ranger Patterson explained. It was partially buried in branches and mud. We were able to trace it through the GPS device's serial number. Detective Morrison opened a folder. "Mr. Al-Jamil, we recovered the memory card from the GPS device. The antenna was damaged. That's why we couldn't ping it during any of our searches over the years. But the memory card retained data from before the damage occurred." Yohan leaned forward, hope and dread warring in his chest. "What did it show?" "The data indicates your wife went deliberately off-trail that day. The last signal came from an area far from any marked path, approximately here." The detective pointed to a topographical map, her finger landing on a remote section of wilderness. "We searched those exact coordinates again yesterday, and this morning found nothing." "But Laura never went off trail," Yohan protested. "She was meticulous about safety. She filed her hiking plans, stayed on marked paths. In 30 years of hiking, she never once deviated from a registered route." Detective Morrison's expression remained neutral. "The GPS data is clear. She was miles from where she said she'd be hiking. Given this evidence and the remote location, we're looking at 2 possibilities: suicide or an accident." "Suicide." Yohan's voice cracked. "Laura had just retired. We had plans. A trip to Europe, visiting our grandchildren in California. She was excited about having more time with me, with the family." "Understand this is difficult," the detective said, her tone softening slightly. "But after 4 years, with wildlife and natural decomposition, there would be very little trace remaining. We won't be reopening the case. The search of those coordinates yielded nothing, and frankly, there's nothing more we can do. Yohan felt the walls closing in. You're giving up? Just like that. We're not giving up, Mr. Al-Jamil. We're being realistic. Your wife went off trail to a dangerous area. Whether intentionally or by accident, the outcome is the same. The case will remain closed. Through his tears, Yohan examined the backpack's contents with Ranger Patterson. Laura's teaching ID sat in its plastic holder, warped but readable. Laura Al-Jamil, Emed. The photo showing her kind eyes behind fashionable glasses, that warm smile he missed so desperately. Her hiking permit, dated October 15th, for years ago, the ink faded but legible. Her phone, the screen cracked and filled with murky water, completely destroyed. The unusual thing, Ranger Patterson said quietly, glancing at the detective who had stepped out to take a call, is where we found this. The Beaver Dam is miles downstream from any marked trail. For the pack to end up there, your wife would have had to be somewhere completely off her registered route. The water flow patterns suggest it traveled a significant distance. Yohan stared at the ruined items, his mind refusing to accept what they implied. Laura always stuck to planned paths. She'd check weather reports 3 times before leaving. She carried backup batteries, emergency supplies. She was methodical about safety. It's what made her such a good teacher, so patient and prepared. This doesn't make sense. The ranger's expression was sympathetic. Sometimes even experienced hikers make mistakes, Mr. Al-Jamil. Or sometimes people don't want to be found. But Yohan knew better. Laura would never leave him and their 5 children alone like that. Not after 30 years of marriage. Not after promising they'd spend every day of retirement together. She'd been counting down the days, crossing them off the calendar in her office with a red marker, excited as a child before Christmas. As he left the station, clutching a bag with photocopies of the permits and a receipt for the backpack, they were keeping it as evidence, though evidence of what he couldn't say. Yohan felt more lost than he had in 4 years. The official verdict was clear. Laura had gone off trail and met with either accident or intention. Case closed, but nothing about this felt like closure. Yohan sat in his car outside the police station for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. The morning had shifted from routine breakfast to earth-shattering discovery, and he needed to tell someone who knew Laura, who understood what kind of woman she was. His wife's former colleagues deserved to know about the backpack. The drive to Aspen Creek High School took him through downtown, past the coffee shop where Laura used to stop every morning for her chai latte and almond croissant, past the park where they'd celebrated her retirement party, her colleagues surprising her with a cake shaped like the Rocky Mountains. The memories were everywhere, inescapable. The school looked different now. The familiar green and gold banner had been replaced with a modern digital sign. The sign updated with sleek lettering. Yohan pushed through the glass doors into a waiting room he barely recognized. Gone were the comfortable chairs and student artwork Laura had insisted on. Everything was stark white and chrome now. "Can I help you?" The young receptionist looked up from her computer, no recognition in her eyes. "I'm Yohan Al-Jamil. My wife, Laura Al-Jamil, used to teach here. I need to speak with someone about a development." The receptionist's perfectly shaped eyebrows furrowed. "I'm sorry, I don't recognize that name. I've only been here 18 months. Could I speak with the principal?" A few minutes later, a harried-looking man in his 30s appeared. "Mr. Al-Jamil, I'm Brandon Shun, the current principal. I'm afraid I didn't know your wife. The school leadership changed 2 years ago, and most of the staff turned over. But Sarah Winters still works here. She was here during Mrs. Al-Jamil's time. Sarah's still here." Yohan felt a wave of relief. Sarah had been Laura's favorite colleague, competent and caring, someone she'd trusted implicitly. "She's in a class right now, but she should be free in about 20 minutes. You can wait in the staff lounge if you'd like. It's more private than out here." The staff lounge, at least, hadn't changed much. Yohan sat at the familiar round table where Laura used to eat lunch, always making sure to include any new teachers who seemed lonely or stressed. 23 minutes later, Sarah rushed in, her face creasing with concern the moment she saw Yohan. "Yohan, oh my goodness, how are you?" Sarah embraced him warmly, then pulled back to study his face. "Is everything okay? You look upset." Yohan's words tumbled out. The backpack, the GPS data, the police's conclusions. Sarah listened intently, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. "They found it in a beaver dam." After all this time, Sarah sank into the chair across from Yohan. "I can't believe it. We still miss her so much here." "Well, those of us who are left anyway. The police think she went off trail deliberately. They're suggesting suicide or that she got lost." Yohan's voice caught. "But you knew Laura. She would never." Sarah agreed firmly. "Yohan, your wife loved her job, loved her students. Her retirement shocked all of us because she seemed so passionate right up until the end. The students adored her. Young Michael Peterson still asks about her every time his mom comes for parent-teacher conferences." Yohan leaned forward. "The GPS showed her miles from any marked trail. The police think that proves she wanted it to disappear. But Laura was so careful about hiking safety." Sarah's expression shifted subtly, something flickering in her eyes. She glanced toward the door, then back to Yohan. Now that you mention it, Laura did seem different that final week." "Different how?" "Anxious, distracted. She kept checking her phone constantly, which wasn't like her at all. During class, she was still completely focused. She'd never compromised her students' learning. But between classes, she seemed worried." Yohan felt his pulse quicken. "Did she say anything?" "I asked her during lunch break on that Wednesday. I remember specifically because she was sitting right where you are now and her salad was untouched. That wasn't like Laura. She always ate healthily." Sarah's voice dropped. "I asked if she was okay, if retirement nerves were getting to her. She gave me this forced smile and said she had a lot to wrap up before retirement." "That sounds reasonable enough." "It wasn't what she said, Yohan. It was how she said it." Her hand was shaking slightly when she picked up her water bottle. In 15 years of working alongside her through stressful exam periods and difficult students, I'd never seen Laura's hand shake. The staff lounge suddenly felt smaller, the fluorescent lights too bright. Was there anything else unusual that week? Sarah stood and quietly closed the staff lounge door, then returned to her seat. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "This is probably nothing, and I've never mentioned it to anyone before, but Mr. Donovan's behavior that week was strange." "Donovan?" Yohan pictured Laura's boss, the head of a local education-focused nonprofit that partnered with the school, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and an easy smile. They'd had dinner together several times over the years, Donovan and his wife Patricia joining them for celebrations and holiday parties. He wouldn't let anyone help with Laura's transition. Usually, when a teacher leaves, the whole department pitches in to transfer files, update lesson plans, reassign students. It's a massive undertaking, but Donovan insisted on handling everything himself. Maybe he wanted to personally ensure continuity. Sarah shook her head. "That's what I thought at first, but Yohan, he was here until midnight several nights that week. I know because I forgot my car keys one evening and came back around 11 o'clock. His office light was still on, and I could see boxes and boxes of files. The strange thing is he took them all to his nonprofit's office instead of storing them in our records room." Yohan felt a chill run down his spine. Laura never mentioned Donovan was acting oddly. That's the thing. Donovan was perfectly normal during the day, cheerful, supportive, throwing Laura that beautiful retirement party. But after hours, Sarah trailed off, shaking her head. "I'm probably reading too much into it. Grief makes us look for explanations where there aren't any. You said Donovan took the files. Were they ever returned?" "I honestly don't know. By the time I thought to ask, the school had the new principal. Donovan's nonprofit got a huge grant. From what I heard, he opened a new, much larger community center across town. Multi-purpose, state-of-the-art equipment. He's doing very well." Yohan remembered Donovan's modest nonprofit from before. Comfortable, but certainly not lavish. That seems like quite an expansion. He's got big donors now, apparently. There was an article in the local paper about his innovative youth programs and community outreach. He's speaking at conferences about maximizing social impact. Sarah's tone carried a hint of disapproval. Very different from the Donovan who used to say every child's future came first. The staff lounge door opened and Brandon peered in. "Sarah, your next class is starting." Sarah squeezed Yohan's hands. "I'm so sorry about the backpack. If you need anything at all, please call me." She paused at the door. "Yohan, I know the police have their theories, but I knew Laura. Whatever happened on that mountain, it wasn't because she wanted to leave you and the kids. She talked about your retirement plans constantly. The trip to Europe, teaching your granddaughter to bake. She was counting down the days." After Sarah left, Yohan sat alone in the staff lounge for a few more minutes, processing what he'd learned. Laura anxious and distracted. Donovan working late, taking files, the successful nonprofit expansion. None of it necessarily meant anything, but combined with the GPS data showing Laura far off trail. He thought about all those dinners with Donovan and Patricia, the easy laughter, the shared stories about their work. Donovan had given a beautiful eulogy at Laura's memorial service, speaking about her integrity and dedication. He'd held Yohan while he cried, promised to help any way he could. But now Sarah's words echoed. Very unusual for a boss to do that kind of work. What had happened in Laura's final week? What had made her steady hands shake? Yohan gathered himself and left the staff lounge, nodding goodbye to the receptionist who was already focused on other tasks, other lives moving forward, while his remained frozen 4 years in the past. But now, for the first time, he wondered if the past held secrets he'd never suspected. Yohan's hands were dusty, and his back ached from bending over boxes, but he couldn't stop searching. The storage unit smelled of mothballs and old paper. Afternoon sunlight slanting through the small window to illuminate dancing dust motes. After Sarah's revelations, he needed to look through Laura's things with fresh eyes. He kept everything from her home office, every file, every notebook, every receipt. At the time, he'd been too grief-stricken to sort through it properly, just boxing it all up with the vague idea that someday he'd be strong enough to face it. Now, 4 years later, that day had arrived with the force of necessity. The first 3 boxes yielded nothing unusual. Education journals, student thank you cards spanning decades, certificates of professional development. Yohan smiled through tears at a crayon, drawing from a young student carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. "Mrs. Al-Jamil is the best." In the 4th box, wedged between 2 thick binders, he found it. Laura's Leather Day planner from her final months. His breath caught. She'd always been old-fashioned about scheduling, preferring pen and paper to digital calendars. He flipped to October, his fingers trembling as he found the week she disappeared. Monday, October 12th. Staff meeting, 7 a.m. parent-teacher conferences, 9 a.m. lunch with Yohan. Tuscany's 1 p.m. Tuesday, October 13th. Grading 6:30 a.m. school until 5. Retirement party 6 p.m. Wednesday, October 14th. Thompson & Associates, 2 p.m. evening, review files. Thursday, October 15th. Meeting with Donovan. Trail parking lot, 7 a.m. Yohan stared at the entry, his mind reeling. October 15th, the day Laura disappeared. She told him she was hiking alone, needed time to clear her head about retirement, process the big life change. He remembered her exact words over breakfast. "Just need a day with the mountains, Yohan. You know how it centers me." But here in her careful handwriting was evidence of a planned meeting with Donovan at the trail parking lot at 7 a.m. Exactly when Laura had left the house that morning. Why had she lied to him? He flipped back to Wednesday's entry. Thompson & Associates. The name seemed vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it. Digging deeper into the box, he found a manila folder labeled October Receipts in Laura's precise hand. Inside, paper clipped together, were 3 receipts from Thompson & Associates. The letterhead clarified what his memory couldn't: financial investigators and forensic accountants. Financial investigators. Laura had never mentioned any financial issues requiring professional consultation. The receipts showed consultations on October 7th and 10th, with a 3rd appointment scheduled for October 16th, the day after she disappeared. Yohan pulled out his phone, grateful the storage unit had decent cell service. The firm answered on the second ring. Thompson and Associates. How may I direct your call? This is Yohan Al-Jamil. My wife, Laura Al-Jamil, was a client 4 years ago. I'm calling about some receipts I found. One moment, please. The hold music was generically soothing. Then, Mr. Al-Jamil, I'm transferring you to Miranda Dalton. She handles our records retention. Another wait, then a professional female voice. Mr. Al-Jamil, I see here that Laura Al-Jamil had consultations with Mr. Thompson in October 4th years ago. How can I help you? I'm trying to understand why my wife needed a forensic accountant. She never mentioned any financial issues. There was a pause. I'm limited in what I can share due to client confidentiality, even posthumously. However, I can tell you that Mrs. Al-Jamil's initial inquiry was regarding suspected money laundering. Yohan's mouth went dry. Money laundering? Yes. She specifically asked about how to properly document evidence of financial irregularities. She was scheduled for a follow-up appointment on October 16th, but never showed. Mr. Thompson tried calling several times, but the secretary's voice softened. I remember when we heard about her disappearance. Mr. Thompson was quite concerned. He said Mrs. Al-Jamil sounded very worried during their last conversation, kept asking about whether her family would be protected if she came forward with information. Protected from what? I'm sorry I can't share any more details, but Mr. Al-Jamil, your wife was very careful in her approach. Whatever she was dealing with, she wanted to handle it properly through professional channels. Yohan thanked her and hung up, his mind spinning. Money laundering, evidence documentation, protection from retaliation, and a meeting with Donovan the morning she disappeared, a meeting she'd hidden from him. He loaded the most important boxes into his car, including the day planner and receipts. The drive home felt surreal. His suburban neighborhood looking exactly as it had that morning. Yet, everything had changed. Laura hadn't just gone hiking. She'd gone to meet Donovan about something serious enough to require professional investigation. As he turned onto his street, Yohan noticed the silver Mercedes in his driveway immediately. Mr. Donovan's car. He'd recognized that customized license plate anywhere. It had 4 kids. His pulse quickened as he pulled up behind it, seeing Donovan standing by his front door, talking animatedly with his neighbor, Mrs. Chun. Mrs. Chun spotted him first, waving enthusiastically. Yohan, I was just telling Mr. Donovan you were out. He's been waiting for you. Donovan turned, his familiar smile in place, but Yohan noticed something he'd never seen before. A tightness around his eyes, a tension in his shoulders. He was wearing an expensive suit, as always, but his tie was slightly askew, unusual for the typically immaculate man. Yohan, he said warmly, approaching his car, I heard about the backpack. The police contacted me this morning to inform me. Asked a few routine questions since I was a close associate of Laura's. I wanted to check on you, see how you're handling this news. Yohan got out of his car slowly, acutely aware of the boxes visible in his back seat. That's kind of you, James. It's been a difficult morning. Mrs. Chun, never one to miss an opportunity for gossip, chimed in. I told Mr. Donovan you'd gone to your storage unit. Spring cleaning, I assumed, though it's October. She laughed at her own observation. Yohan saw it then, the flash of something in Donovan's eyes when Mrs. Chun mentioned the storage unit. His smile remained, but it faltered for just a moment, like a briefly flickering light bulb. Storage unit? Donovan asked casually, but his voice carried an edge Yohan had never heard before. Sorting through old things. Just some of Laura's belongings, Yohan replied carefully. The police returning her backpack made me want to reconnect with her memory. Donovan nodded sympathetically, but his gaze kept darting to his car. Of course. Grief takes us all differently. Find anything interesting? Sometimes going through old things can bring unexpected comfort or surprises. The question felt loaded, heavy with subtext Yohan couldn't quite grasp. Mrs. Chun seemed oblivious, nattering on about her own late husband's belongings, but Donovan wasn't listening. His attention was fixed on Yohan with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Just memories, Yohan said. If you'll excuse me, James, it's been a long day. Of course. Donovan stepped aside, but not before adding, "If you need anything, Yohan, anything at all, please call. Laura was very important to me. I'd hate for her legacy to be tarnished by misunderstandings." The word hung in the air between them, misunderstandings. Yohan forced a smile, nodded, and walked to his front door on unsteady legs. He could feel Donovan's eyes on his back, could sense him cataloging the boxes in his car. Only after he was inside, door locked behind him, did he allow himself to lean against the wall and take a shaking breath. Donovan's appearance, so soon after the police had contacted him, felt like more than coincidence. His interest in what he'd found in storage, the way his mask had slipped when Mrs. Chan mentioned where he'd been, and that parting comment about Laura's legacy and misunderstandings. Yohan peered through his front window. Donovan was still there, now back at his car, but not leaving. Cell phone pressed to his ear. His free hand gestured sharply as he spoke. Nothing like the calm, collected philanthropist he'd known for 15 years, or thought he'd known. The day planner sat in his bag, that single entry burning in his mind. Meeting with Donovan. Trail parking lot 7 a.m. What had Laura discovered that required a forensic accountant? What had she been planning to tell Donovan that morning? And why was Donovan so interested in what he might have found in storage? Yohan had barely settled inside when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw Donovan still on his doorstep, his expression rearranged into one of gentle concern. He considered not answering, but something told him that would only make him more persistent. He opened the door partway. "Yohan, I'm sorry to bother you again," Donovan said, his voice soft and solicitous. "I was about to leave when I realized how abrupt I must have seemed. This news about Laura's backpack has shaken me, too. I was wondering, would you like to get coffee? Sometimes it helps to talk with someone who knew her well, who understands what a special woman she was." Every instinct screamed caution, but Yohan also recognized an opportunity. If Donovan was involved in whatever had troubled Laura, perhaps he could learn something. "I suppose a cup of coffee would be nice," he said carefully. "Wonderful. How about corner coffee on Main? I remember Laura mentioning it was your favorite spot." "That'll be fine. I'll meet you there in 15 minutes. "I'll drive us," Donovan offered quickly. "No sense taking two cars." "No, I'll drive myself," Yohan said firmly. "I have errands to run afterward." Something flickered in Donovan's eyes, but he nodded. "Of course, I'll see you there." Yohan closed the door and immediately pulled out his phone, texting his eldest son, Amir. "Meeting Mr. Donovan at Corner Coffee on Main. If you don't hear from me in 2 hours, call police." Not joking. Amir's response was immediate. "What's going on? Are you okay? We'll explain later. Just please keep an eye on the time." The drive to Corner Coffee took only 10 minutes, but Yohan used every one to steady his nerves. He parked where his car was visible from the window and chose a table in the busy main area, not the cozy back corner Donovan suggested. "You remembered," Yohan said as Donovan returned with their drinks. "A black coffee for him, chai latte for her memory." "Laura talked about you constantly," Donovan said, settling into his chair. "Black coffee, hiking at sunrise, your grandchildren's soccer games. She was devoted to you." The words should have been comforting, but something in Donovan's tone made them feel like a probe, testing his defenses. Yohan took a sip of his coffee and waited. "This must be so difficult," Donovan continued. "The not knowing for 4 years, and now this discovery. Have you had time to process it all?" "I'm managing," Yohan said carefully. Donovan leaned forward, his expression sympathetic. "Going through Laura's things must be emotional. All those memories stored away. Did you find much in storage?" "Sometimes people keep things they never mention to their spouses. Work documents, for instance." There it was. Yohan kept his face neutral. "Mostly education journals and student thank you cards. Laura saved every drawing a child ever gave her." "How like her," Donovan smiled. But his fingers had started a rhythmic tap against the table. "No work files?" She was always so meticulous about documentation. I'd imagine she kept copies of important paperwork. "Just the usual," Yohan said vaguely. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason. It's just that when the police called this morning, they asked if Laura had taken any school files home. Privacy violations, you understand? I assured them Laura would never do such a thing, but I wanted to make sure for her reputation's sake. Yohan noticed the slight sheen of perspiration on Donovan's forehead despite the coffee shop's cool temperature. The police asked about school files? Standard questions, I'm sure. Donovan's drumming fingers picked up pace. They also asked about her state of mind those final weeks. I told them what I observed, of course. Did you happen to find any personal writings, journals? Sometimes people contemplating major life changes write things down. Laura wasn't much of a journal keeper, Yohan said, watching Donovan's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. No, how about appointment books? She always carried that leather planner. Donovan's attempt at casual interest was failing. His voice had developed an edge. Yohan made a decision. Actually, I did find her day planner. Donovan's fingers stopped drumming. Oh, yes. It was interesting looking at her final week. All those appointments wrapping up her career. He paused, watching Donovan's face carefully. There was an entry on October 15th that confused me. October 15th? Donovan's voice was steady, but his knuckles had whitened where he gripped his coffee cup. She'd written, meeting with Donovan, trail parking lot 7 a.m., but she told me she was hiking alone that morning. The transformation in Donovan's face was instant and complete. The mask of concern shattered, replaced by something Yohan had never seen before, calculation mixed with barely controlled panic. Oh, that, Donovan said, his laugh forced and hollow. Poor Laura. She was so confused that morning. Actually, she called me around 6:30, sounding agitated. She was worried about her mental state, said retirement was hitting her harder than expected. I tried to talk her out of hiking, suggested we meet to discuss her concerns, but she insisted she needed time alone on the mountain. Yohan stared at him. This man he'd known for 15 years, watching him construct lies as easily as breathing. Laura called you? Yes, very early. Patricia can confirm the phone woke us both. She sounded unwell, talking about pressure, about things she couldn't handle. I offered to meet her to help, but she became almost paranoid. Said she needed to think. Donovan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a confidential tone. Yohan, I didn't want to burden you with this, but Laura had been showing signs of depression for weeks. The retirement transition was devastating for her. Depression? Yohan heard his own voice sharp with disbelief. Laura was excited about retirement. She had plans, trips mapped out. Sometimes people hide their true feelings even from those closest to them. Donovan interrupted smoothly. As a teacher, she would have known how to mask the symptoms. That confusion about our meeting, writing it down when it was just a phone call. That's typical of someone under severe stress. But Yohan knew better. He'd seen that day planner entry. Laura's handwriting was firm, precise, exactly as it always was. No confusion, no trembling letters of a woman in distress. And Laura had never lied to him, not once in 30 years. If she'd spoken to Donovan that morning, she would have mentioned it. I should go, Yohan said, standing abruptly. Donovan stood too quickly, his coffee cup rattling against the saucer. Yohan, wait. If you found anything else, any documents that might be misinterpreted, I hope you'll let me know. For Laura's sake, her reputation. Laura's reputation doesn't need protecting, Yohan said coldly. Excuse me. He walked out steadily, but he could feel Donovan's eyes boring into his back. In his peripheral vision, he caught sight of his reflection in the window, standing frozen by their table, his coffee cup trembling visibly in his hand. The man who had delivered Laura's eulogy, who had praised her integrity and dedication, who had promised to help him through his grief. That man was gone. In his place stood someone Yohan didn't recognize, someone whose carefully constructed story about Laura's mental state was so obviously false, it made his stomach turn. Laura hadn't been depressed. She hadn't been confused. She'd had an appointment with Donovan that morning, and Donovan was desperate to hide why. Yohan's hand shook as he pushed through the restroom door. The normalcy of the coffee shop, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of customers felt surreal against the hammering of his heart. He locked himself in the farthest stall and pulled out his phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. 911, what's your emergency? Yohan kept his voice to a whisper. I'm at Corner Coffee on Main Street. I'm with someone who I believe may be dangerous. Please send someone. Sir, are you in immediate danger? I don't know. Maybe. His name is Mr. James Donovan. He's asking questions about my deceased wife, and he's acting erratically. I am scared. We'll send a unit to check on you. Can you safely stay where you are? I have to go back out there, or he'll get suspicious. Please hurry. Yohan ended the call and took several deep breaths, trying to compose himself. He splashed cold water on his face, practiced a neutral expression in the mirror, and walked back out with what he hoped looked like calm. The sight that greeted him made his stomach drop. Donovan had moved from his side of the table to Yohan's side of the booth, blocking his exit. His coffee sat abandoned across the table. There you are, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. I was starting to worry. Yohan forced himself to slide into the booth, pressed against the wall. Sorry, I'm just feeling a bit overwhelmed by everything today. Understandable. Donovan's tone had shifted, the false sympathy replaced by something harder. You know, I drove past your house this morning on my way to a meeting early, around 6 o'clock. Noticed you had boxes out by the curb. Spring cleaning in October. Yohan's mouth went dry. There had been no boxes by his curb. Don't lie to me, Yohan. The words came out sharp, cutting through the coffee shop ambience. I saw you loading boxes into your car at the storage unit. Mrs. Chun was quite chatty about your activities. I should go, Yohan said, trying to slide past him. Donovan didn't budge. What did you find? Nothing. Just memories, like I said. Yohan's voice came out higher than intended. Laura kept copies of everything, didn't she? Always so thorough, so self-righteous. The last words came out as a hiss. Yohan pushed harder against him. I need to leave. My son is expecting me. For a moment, Donovan didn't move, then slowly he stood. Of course, let me walk you to your car. It wasn't a request. Donovan's hand was on his elbow, his grip firm as he guided him toward the exit. Yohan scanned the coffee shop desperately, hoping to catch someone's eye, but everyone was absorbed in their own conversations, their own lives. The October air hit his face as they stepped outside, and with it came a new level of fear. The parking lot was nearly empty, his car parked in the far corner where he'd thought it would be visible from the window. Now that distance felt like miles. Where are they? Donovan's voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. Where are what? His grip tightened painfully. The documents, the files, whatever Laura kept. I know she made copies. I don't know what you're talking about. Donovan spun him around, slamming him back against his car. Don't play stupid with me. Laura was going to ruin everything with her self-righteous attitude. 40 years of building a community, creating opportunities, helping people, and she wanted to destroy it all over some numbers on a spreadsheet. James, you're hurting me. Where are the files? He shook him, his face inches from his. Did you give them to the police? The FBI? Who else knows? Yohan tried to pull away, but Donovan was stronger than his silver hair suggested. Let go of me. People saw us leave together. If anything happens to me, that's when he saw the gun. Donovan pulled it from inside his jacket in one smooth motion, pressing it against his ribs. The metal was cold through his thin sweater. Get in my car. James, please. Get in the car. He shoved him toward his Mercedes, the gun hidden between their bodies, but unmistakably there. Move. Yohan's legs felt like water. You don't have to do this. Whatever happened with Laura, shut up. Donovan opened the passenger door, using his body to shield the gun from any potential witnesses. Get in, or I'll shoot you right here. Yohan looked around desperately. The coffee shop windows reflected the afternoon sun, impossible to see through. A woman walked past on the sidewalk, absorbed in her phone. No one was coming to help. Please, he whispered as Donovan shoved him into the seat. I have grandchildren. You should have thought of that before you started digging. Donovan slammed the door and moved quickly to the driver's side. The gun now pointed at him across the center console. Hands where I can see them. Yohan placed his shaking hands on his lap as Donovan started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. He drove with one hand, the gun steady in the other. You should have kept out of this, he said, his voice eerily calm now. Should have just accepted that Laura killed herself like everyone else did. For years, Yohan. For years of peace, and you had to ruin it. You killed her? The words came out as a whisper, but Donovan heard them. Laura killed herself the moment she decided to be a hero. Do you know how many people depended on my nonprofit? Not just employees, their families, their children's college funds, their mortgages. One sanctimonious teacher was going to ruin the lives of dozens of people. Yohan began to cry, tears streaming down his face as Donovan drove faster, leaving the commercial district behind. The familiar streets gave way to suburban neighborhoods, then to the rural roads that led toward the Rocky Mountains. She found discrepancies, didn't she? Yohan said through his tears. In the finances. Donovan's laugh was bitter. Discrepancies. Such a clinical word for it. Laura couldn't understand that sometimes you have to work the system to keep a nonprofit afloat. Donors have expectations. Grants have stipulations. I was just making sure we met them. By committing fraud, by laundering money. Donovan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. But St. Laura couldn't see the gray areas. Everything was black and white to her. She was going to report me, destroy everything I'd built, send me to prison. For what? For making sure my people could feed their families. The trees grew denser as they drove, the afternoon sun filtering through the canopy. Yohan recognized the area. This was the road to the Bear Lake trailhead, the same route Laura would have taken that October morning. Where are you taking me? Where do you think? Donovan turned onto a dirt road, the Mercedes bumping over roots and rocks. Your wife liked to hike. Thought the mountains gave her clarity. Let's see if they do the same for you. 20 minutes of terrifying silence passed, broken only by Yohan's quiet prayers and the sound of gravel under the tires. Finally, Donovan pulled into a small clearing and shut off the engine. Get out. Yohan's legs nearly gave out as he stood. The forest was quiet, peaceful, even birds calling in the distance. It seemed impossible that he was about to die in such a beautiful place. Walk. Donovan gestured with the gun toward a narrow trail leading into the trees. We're going to take a little hike, just like Laura did. They'll find you, Yohan said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. The police know I was with you. My son knows. Your son knows you had coffee with an old friend. The police will find your car at the coffee shop and assume you went for a walk to clear your head. Grief does strange things to people. Sometimes they follow their loved ones. He pushed him forward onto the trail, the gun pressed against his back. The trees closed in around them, the afternoon light growing dimmer under the canopy. Move, Donovan commanded. We have some walking to do. The forest floor was uneven, covered in fallen branches and exposed roots that caught at Yohan's feet. Donovan pushed him forward relentlessly, the gun barrel a constant pressure against his spine. His breathing came in short gasps, both from exertion and fear. Keep moving, Donovan commanded, his own breathing heavy. Don't even think about running. You wouldn't make it 5 feet. Yohan stumbled over a thick root, catching himself against a moss-covered tree. The bark was rough under his palms, real and solid in a way that made this nightmare feel impossibly concrete. How many times had Laura touched these same trees, walked these same paths? They'd gone maybe 50 yards into the woods when the first siren wailed in the distance. Donovan froze, his head whipping around like a startled deer. No, he muttered. No, no, no. More sirens joined the first, growing louder, closer. Yohan felt a surge of hope that died quickly when Donovan's hand clamped around his arm. You called them. His voice was flat, disbelieving. At the coffee shop, you called the police. The sirens were screaming now, multiple vehicles from the sound of it. Through the trees, Yohan could see flashes of red and blue lights. Damn it! Donovan yanked him roughly against him, spinning him around to face the direction they'd come. His arm went around his neck, the gun pressing against his temple. This wasn't supposed to happen. The sounds of car doors slamming echoed through the forest. Voices shouting commands, the rustle of movement through undergrowth. They were surrounding the area. Mr. Donovan, a familiar voice boomed through a megaphone. Detective Morrison from that morning. This is the police. We have the area surrounded. Let Mr. Al-Jamil go and come out with your hands visible. Donovan backed up against a large Douglas fir using its trunk as cover while keeping Yohan firmly in front of him. He could feel him trembling against his back, his arm tightening around his throat. "Back off," he shouted. "Everyone back off, or I'll kill him. I swear I'll do it. Mr. Donovan, no one needs to get hurt here." Detective Morrison's amplified voice carried clearly through the trees. "Let's talk about this. Let Yohan go, and we can work something out." "There's nothing to work out." Donovan's voice cracked. "You don't understand. Laura was going to destroy everything. Everything I built." Yohan could see officers taking positions behind trees, weapons drawn, but pointed down. They were being careful, professional. A younger officer in tactical gear was moving slowly closer from the left, using the undergrowth as cover. "Stay back." Donovan swung the gun toward the movement, then back to Yohan's head. "I mean it. Everyone stay where you are." The standoff stretched out, minutes feeling like hours. Sweat dripped from Donovan's face onto Yohan's neck. He could feel his whole body shaking now, the gun wavering against his temple. This wasn't supposed to happen, he kept muttering. Laura should have just kept her mouth shut. I offered her a promotion, a raise. Did you know that? Enough to travel, enjoy retirement. But no, she had to be noble, had to be righteous. Mr. Donovan, a new voice called out. Male, calm, professional. I'm Officer David Chun, a negotiator. Can we talk? Help me understand what happened. What happened? Donovan laughed bitterly. What happened is that one sanctimonious teacher decided she was judge and jury. 15 years of friendship meant nothing to her. Nothing. Yohan felt Donovan's grip shifting, his agitation growing. The gun moved from his temple to wave at the police, then back again. His movements were becoming erratic, unpredictable. She had evidence. Donovan continued, almost rambling now. Copies of everything, invoices, bank statements, so careful, so thorough, just like always. Said she was going to the authorities that afternoon if I didn't turn myself in. Officer Chun took a slow step forward, hands visible and empty. Let's talk about this, Mr. Donovan. I'm sure there's... Don't come any closer. Donovan's voice rose to a near scream. Panic had taken over completely now. Yohan could feel his heart hammering against his back, his breathing ragged. Shin took another small step. It was too much. Donovan made a sound somewhere between a sob and a snarl, raising the gun and bringing it down hard against the side of Yohan's head. Pain exploded through his skull, white lights dancing across his vision. He cried out, his knees buckling, and suddenly he was falling. The moment Yohan dropped, Donovan's human shield was gone. He looked down at his crumpled form, then at the circle of officers closing in, and made a desperate decision. He turned and ran, crashing through the undergrowth deeper into the forest. He made it maybe 20 feet. 2 officers in tactical gear burst from concealment, hitting Donovan from both sides. They went down in a tangle of limbs, Donovan fighting wildly, but hopelessly outmatched. Within seconds, they had him face down in the pine needles, arms wrenched behind his back. Stop resisting, one officer commanded as they cuffed him. But Donovan kept struggling, kept ranting. You don't understand. Laura destroyed everything. My nonprofit, my reputation, my life. She destroyed it all with her righteousness. 40 years of work gone because one woman couldn't mind her own business. Yohan held his hand to his bleeding head, the world spinning as EMTs rushed to him. He could hear Donovan still shouting as they hauled him to his feet, pine needles and dirt clinging to his expensive suit. She wouldn't listen, Donovan screamed. I begged her, offered her a promotion, offered her anything, but she had to be the hero. Had to save the world. Well, where did it get her? Where did it get her? The EMTs were gentle, professional, checking Yohan's pupils and pressing gauze to the gash on his scalp. You're going to be okay, one assured him. Just a nasty cut. We'll get you checked out at the hospital. Through his tears and pain, Yohan watched as they dragged Donovan away, still ranting about Laura, about money, about everything being destroyed. The distinguished philanthropist he'd known for 15 years was gone, replaced by this wild-eyed stranger covered in forest debris, spitting accusations at a dead woman. Detective Morrison knelt beside him as the EMTs worked. You did good, Mr. Al-Jamil. That 911 call saved your life. Yohan nodded weakly, then winced at the pain it caused. Around them, the forest was full of activity. Officers, radios crackling, evidence being marked. The peaceful trail had become a crime scene. But Yohan was alive. Unlike Laura, he would walk out of these woods. The thought brought fresh tears, but also a grim satisfaction. Donovan had failed. Whatever secrets Laura had died protecting, Donovan's attempts to bury them had failed. Justice, delayed by 4 years, was finally coming. The fluorescent lights in the police station interview room made Yohan's headache worse, but he refused to go to the hospital until he'd given his statement. A butterfly bandage held the cut on his head closed, the EMTs assuring him it wouldn't need stitches. Detective Morrison sat across from him, a digital recorder between them while a younger officer took notes. "Take your time, Mr. Al-Jamil," Morrison said gently. "Start wherever you're comfortable." Yohan began with the morning's discovery of the backpack, moved through Sarah's revelations at the high school, the storage unit findings, and finally Donovan's increasingly erratic behavior. His voice shook when he described the gun, the drive into the forest, the certainty that he was about to die where Laura had died. He kept saying Laura should have kept her mouth shut. Yohan said that Laura was going to destroy everything. Morrison nodded. "Mr. Donovan is in interrogation room, too. Would you like to take a break?" "No. I need to know what happened to my wife." A knock on the door interrupted them. Another detective leaned in, whispered something to Morrison that made her eyebrows rise. "Mr. Al-Jamil," Morrison said carefully, "Donovan's story is falling apart quickly, faced with the day planner evidence and your statement. He's talking a lot." Yohan's hands clenched in his lap. "What is he saying?" "I'll get the latest update. Officer Williams will stay with you." Morrison left, returning 15 minutes later with a grim expression and a thick folder. "Donovan broke down completely," she said, sitting back down. "He's confessed to Laura's murder." The word hit Yohan like a physical blow. Murder. Not missing, not suicide, not accident. Murder. Morrison opened the folder. According to Donovan, he and 2 accomplices, men who worked for a security company he had on retainer, met Laura at the trailhead that morning. They told Laura they wanted to discuss a resolution to their quota misunderstanding, so they could work things out privately. Laura believed them. Apparently, she was wary but willing to listen. Donovan convinced her they just needed to talk away from potential eavesdroppers. They followed her up the trail for about an hour, getting her far from any witnesses. Yohan closed his eyes, picturing Laura hiking with those men, probably still hoping for a peaceful resolution. She'd always believed in people's better nature. They stopped at a remote viewpoint. Morrison continued. Donovan made one last attempt to buy Laura's silence. When Laura refused and said she was going to the authorities that very afternoon, Donovan claims one of his accomplices pushed Laura. But given Donovan's pattern of lies, we suspect he gave the order or did it himself. "Ow!" The word came out as a whisper. It was a 200-foot drop on rocks. Death would have been instantaneous. Morrison's voice softened. "She wouldn't have suffered, Mr. Al-Jamil." Yohan nodded, unable to speak. Morrison gave him a moment before continuing. Donovan and his accomplices made it look like Laura had gone off-trail on her own. They damaged the GPS device to prevent tracking through the backpack in the river. They thought it would never be found. But why? Yohan finally managed. What was worth killing for? Morrison pulled out another document. This is where it gets complicated. Donovan has admitted to extensive money laundering over the past 15 years. He was using his nonprofit as a front for a major drug trafficking ring. The grant money, the donations, it was all being cleaned. Sarah mentioned he wouldn't let anyone help with the student transitions. Yohan said slowly. He took all the files to his office. He was covering his tracks. The drug trafficking was his real business. The nonprofit was just a very convincing cover. Yohan felt sick. The man who delivered Laura's eulogy, who praised her integrity, had been running a criminal enterprise from behind his philanthropist facade. Laura discovered discrepancies during her final weeks, Morrison explained. Donovan got sloppy, or maybe Laura was just that thorough. Financial records that didn't add up, donations that didn't match the books, unusual cash flows. Laura started investigating quietly, gathering evidence. The forensic accountant, Yohan, said suddenly she was consulting about how to document it. She was building a case. Donovan found out. He won't say how, and tried to buy her off with a promotion and a raise. When that failed, he tried threats. Laura didn't back down. An officer knocked and entered, speaking quietly to Morrison. Yohan watched the detective's face change, a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. "Mr. Al-Jamil," Morrison said gently. "Based on Donovan's confession about the exact location, we sent a helicopter to the cliff area. They found remains." Yohan's vision blurred with tears. For years of not knowing, the remains are lodged between rocks in a ravine. Recovery teams are working to bring her home. "I need to prepare you. After 4 years of exposure to weather and wildlife, identification will require DNA testing, and much of the much is missing." Yohan nodded, tears flowing freely now. "But I can bury her. I can give her a proper funeral." "Yes," Morrison said softly. "You can." Yohan wiped his eyes. "What about Donovan's accomplices?" "He's naming names, trying to get a deal. 2 men from the security company. We have units picking them up now. The DEA is getting involved given the scale of the drug trafficking. This is big, Mr. Al-Jamil. Your wife uncovered something that goes beyond just one corrupt philanthropist." Yohan thought about Laura's final week, the shaking hands Sarah had noticed, the secret accountant visits, the weight of knowledge she'd carried alone. She'd known how dangerous Donovan was, but felt morally obligated to stop him. She tried to protect him and the children by keeping them ignorant of the danger. "She knew they might kill her," Yohan said quietly. "That's why she didn't tell me about the meeting. She was protecting us." "Your wife was a brave woman," Morrison said. "She could have taken the promotion, looked the other way. Instead, she chose to do the right thing." "She always did," Yohan whispered. "It's who she was." Later, as Yohan signed his statement, he thought about the 2 people he'd lost that day. The wife who died 4 years ago, trying to stop a monster, and the illusion of the friend he thought he'd known. Donovan had sat at their dinner table, laughed at Laura's jokes, played the role of a respected community leader while running a criminal empire that destroyed lives. But Laura had seen through the mask, and even knowing the cost might be her life, she'd stood up to the corruption. She'd gathered evidence, consulted experts, prepared to bring Donovan down properly. Legally, she'd died on a mountain she loved, pushed by men she'd naively trusted. But she died with her integrity intact. Yohan left the police station as the sun was setting, painting the Rocky Mountains in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere on that mountain, recovery teams were bringing Laura home. The not knowing was over. The questions were answered. His tears came fresh, but mixed with the grief was pride. Laura had died a hero, even if no one but him and a few others would ever know it. She'd sacrificed herself to stop an evil that had festered behind a philanthropist's mask. He drove home slowly, already planning the funeral Laura deserved. A proper burial with full honors, with the truth of her courage finally known. Donovan would face justice. His accomplices would be caught. The network would be dismantled, and Laura would finally rest in peace. Her final battle won.